There are three things that if you want to survive as an organization, you absolutely have to do. The first is you have to have clarity of purpose. People think they have clarity of purpose, but if you ask your staff what your purpose is as an organization, the more people you ask, the more different answers you'll get. They'll all be close, but they'll be different. You can't have an organization moving as a whole, as a unit, if everybody isn't on the same page. That's the number one killer of youth organizations, lack of clarity of purpose. The killer of adolescence is lack of consistency of performance. You have to be able to create and commit to your market and your clients, and that commitment has to be your bond. They have to know when you say something, it will always, always happen. That's McDonald's.
Welcome to another episode of Reframe for Resilience. Our guest today is Mr. Lawrence Mandelberg. He is a fifth generation business owner, and he'll tell us a little bit about that. He is a consultant, a speaker, an author. One of his books, which is very fascinating, says, title, Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide. So I will be asking him a little bit about his background and particularly about that book. And what is it that businesses could do to avoid committing suicide? Namely, what different perspectives could they take? How could they reframe?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing, and I love your approach and your message, and I'm glad to be able to contribute to your audience.
Well, thank you very much. And you do have a lot to contribute. So to get started, could you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Well, my journey is an interesting one and a little different than most. I'm a fifth generation family business owner. My family started the business in the mid 1850s in hides and furs. And over the years, that evolved into a number of different industries, ultimately being what's known as the automotive aftermarket. I've never been one for following the crowd. So my life has been spent working for my own companies. I've never worked for a company that I didn't own, other than in college, of course, and 13 different companies. And through those experiences and my research, coupled with my what I like to call 170 years of business experience, I've been blessed with the opportunity to see a lot of things and experience a lot of things firsthand. And my joy and my purpose is to share that knowledge with other businesses, other organizations, so that they can create healthy environments where staff feel appreciated and love what they're doing, and employers love their staff and treat them with the kind of respect they deserve, which leads to sustainability, it leads to profitability, it leads to low turnover, it leads to less stress at work, it leads to just a host of wonderful things. And in my experience, it's just a much better way to live. So I'm happy to share this whenever I can.
Well, I'm glad you're here to share it with us. And in fact, you capture a lot of that in your term, Corporate Lifecycle Theory. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, corporate lifecycle theory is something that was developed in the 1980s and became somewhat popularized in the 1990s. And what it is it's a study of how organizations grow and die, how they age. And it's one of the most interesting things for me about corporate lifecycle theory is that it is one of the most infallible indicators of an organization's situation in a particular moment of time that I've ever seen. It is so predictable. It's as predictable as the human life cycle. Humans, we age in a very consistent manner. We're repetitive. We get our teeth, we lose our teeth. We don't have hair, we grow hair, we lose hair. We go through puberty, and then we lose our body loses its reproductive abilities. Joints develop strength, and then they wear out. So it's very predictable. It happens over different periods of time, but the sequence and the actual events, if some other factor doesn't interfere, are very, very consistent. So corporate life cycle theory says organizations mature over time, and it defines different theorists define maturity in different ways. I have my own way of defining maturity. So what I did was, instead of trying to expand on corporate life cycle theory, I focused on a segment of the corporate life cycle and a segment of the business community to find out what activities they were doing that made them mature faster or slower, and that leads to either success or failure.
When you talk about mature, you're talking about aging, or are you talking about maturing in the sense of becoming more capable?
It's an excellent question. Organizational maturity is a measure of experience and breadth. So narrow and shallow. We don't have any firsthand experience outside our area of specialty, outside our area of expertise. We know what we know, and we don't know a lot else. And we don't know a lot about it. It's not very deep. We're early, we're young, we're immature. I call that youth, narrow and shallow. Adolescence, and I have 3 stages in my theory. Adolescence is still narrow. We don't have a lot of breadth, but we have a lot of depth. We've been doing it for a long time, so we have a lot of experience underneath us. But when you get outside of our area of expertise, we don't have the same level of experience, right? I'm not talking about knowledge. I'm not talking about expertise. I'm not talking about skills. I'm talking about first-hand experience. Been there, done that. The third and final stage is adulthood. And adulthood is when you have broad and deep experience. The older an organization gets, the more it understands how it is impacted by and impacts other organizations that exist, because it's an ecosystem. We all exist in the same ecosystem. So the more you learn about how your business is successful, you eventually have to learn how you're going to interact with other businesses and how those other businesses impact your space. So that's how the corporate life cycle theory comes to play in my research.
So we start off with knowing little or nothing, no experience, no breadth, no depth. Move to adolescence, where we begin to get some depth.
Correct.
And we get to adulthood, there's both breadth and depth,
Absolutely.
which
That is maturity.
experience, that's the maturity. And that brings an understanding of our business, as well as the ecosystem within which our business operates.
Correct.
So tell me, what are some of the things within any particular business that you look at that can characterize these stages?
So in order to do this, one of the things that I had, in order to make this valuable, one of the things that I had to do was to be able to assess the level of maturity in an organization. So I developed an assessment tool called the Business Manager's Reality Index, or the BMRI. And what it is it's an 8-question multiple choice survey that identifies the 8 characteristics that measure organizational maturity, and it ranks them from weakest to strongest. By looking at the weakest, I can tell, and the strongest, I can tell where they are from a maturation standpoint. So when I start with a new client, I have everybody that's involved in decision making take the survey, and that shows leadership that their organization is in fact in a particular spot based upon 6, 8, 10, 30 different people taking the same survey and producing independently and producing similar results. Plus, it shows me where I need to focus my work. So I should say that youth is defined by three characteristics. Adolescence is defined by three characteristics, and adulthood is characterized by two characteristics.
In one metric, and I'm putting it in a simplistic way.
Mhm.
One metric is the happiness of the staff, of the employees. And by happiness, I mean the motivation and the engagement.
Right. So that is correct. It is not something I measure. Let me give you an example of one of the eight indicators. It is roles and responsibilities. I want to know how your roles and responsibilities are documented. And based on how your roles and responsibilities are documented, that is one of the factors for adolescence. And based on that, I can tell you whether you have strength or not. And when you couple all three of them together, it creates one element of that employee happiness or satisfaction. So, for example, one of the things that I talk about is a job description should not give you a specific task. Should give you an objective. So a job description that says take out the trash every night is a bad one. A job description that says keep the office clean is a good one.
Mhm.
One is a task, one is an objective.
Mhm.
So one of the pieces, one of the little pieces of all of this big puzzle is when you give jobs to people, define their jobs by giving them objectives,
Mhm.
measurable objectives, not tasks.
What are two or three learnings you would leave with us in terms of things we need to pay attention to move from adolescence to adulthood?
There are three things that if you want to survive as an organization, you absolutely have to do. The first is you have to have clarity of purpose. People think they have clarity of purpose, but if you ask your staff what your purpose is as an organization, the more people you ask, the more different answers you'll get. They'll all be close, but they'll be different. You can't have an organization moving as a whole, as a unit, if everybody isn't on the same page. That's the number one killer of youth organizations, lack of clarity of purpose. The killer of adolescence is lack of consistency of performance. You have to be able to create and commit to your market and your clients, and that commitment has to be your bond. They have to know when you say something, it will always, always happen. That's McDonald's. It's not quality, it's consistency. And finally, you have to create engagement of people. I call them the three P's: purpose, performance, and people. The only thing that you need to understand is that change will cause you trouble if you don't embrace it. The most important thing for a business to do is to recognize that it exists in an environment that is constantly changing. And the only thing you can guarantee is that your world tomorrow will be different. You have to learn how to embrace change and make it your own and make it positive. That's the most critical thing I can tell anybody. And the last thing I'm going to say, and this is a habit that people need to get into, and it's very hard to do. I've spent 40 years trying to get people to do this. Put everything in writing. When I ask you if you have a business plan, don't tell me, yes, it's in my head. If you have a business plan in your head, you do not have a business plan. It's not a business plan till it's on paper, in writing.